My name is Robert Strand, and on October 4th, 1969, I produced a rock festival called the Gold Rush at Lake Amador, California. Certain things have happened in the last year or two that have made me want to go on the record and salute this incredible day and give kudos to some of the people that helped make it happen, and maybe get a permanent record down for everyone as to what this concert was, what it meant to the community. The dynamics were amazing. Its relationship to the San Francisco scene, all the Valley kids that came there, the San Francisco people, the East Bay people. The show itself was a remarkable booking achievement, I must say myself, and I can't take full credit for that, but I can take a lot of credit for it. The running of the show, the weather, the location, the stage, the PA, everything was pretty much perfect that day. It was kind of a coming out for a lot of young kids. We had, or myself, my family, we put up every dime we had to make this thing happen. And I've got a lot of really fun stories, and I want to relate them to you and talk about the setup of the concert, how it came about, the booking of it, the stories about the different bands we put together, and then certainly we want to go into the day itself. There will be editing, well, you'll see that by the time this gets done. There's no video from there, and it's really a shame. There's no 8mm. There wasn't any of the technical stuff we have today, and that's really a shame, because this show had an amazing combination of emotions that it's one of those you just had to have been there to believe it, and to believe we could even pull it off up there. I mean, incredible coincidence of events allowed this to somehow sneak through the bureaucracies of the county of Amador, and with the police and the sheriff and neighbors. Fortunately, the location of Lake Amador had a lot to do with why it came off, and that's because it's very removed. It's up in the Sierra foothills, probably about, oh, I don't know, maybe 1,000 feet, 1,200 feet up. Rolling hills heading towards the mountains, lots of oak trees. The lake surrounded the concert site, and it set up a perfect picture for us to add bands, audience, and an amazing day. I had been doing rock concerts for several years before Lake Amador occurred on October 4th, 1969. I was the manager of I think a great rock and roll band called Country Weather, who played numerous engagements at the Fillmore and the Avalon and stuff back in 67, 68, 69. And I started doing concerts really to help support the band, because there just wasn't that many gigs out there. And I have to say I was really good at it. I'm a great promoter. I have a great sense of media. I have a great sense of staging. I have a great ability to communicate with an audience, and all those ingredients kind of came together, and I started doing rock and roll shows. As things went along, I'm not real clear on how the Lake Amador thing came to mind as far as it actually happening. I have to throw out kudos to Doc Davis at Delta College, who was running little shows and things for a benefit for some kind of cause in Costa Rica. And he had the initial contact with the folks at Lake Amador. And to be honest with you, I don't really recall how Doc and I really hooked up for that. What really happened was it allowed me to have a established professor of a college kind of fronting that initial public relations with the Lake Amador owner and probably with the county to some extent. And I think that probably helped us a lot in the initial setting up of the show, of just getting the rights to do the thing. And Doc didn't have much to do with the actual promotion and nothing to do with the day itself, really. But he was a door opener for us. His position, and I have to give him a lot of credit, because that was the coincidence that helped open the door for us to have this amazing venue for the show. And at that point, it was more like, okay, we've got this place. Let's go take a look at it. Let's see if it's practical to be able to put this show out there. You got to look at the venue itself, the physical characteristics of it. Where in this lake area is there a good amphitheater or area for the audience, for the stage, for all that. So all that was kind of coming together at one moment, And once we had settled up the legalities as good as they could be then with the owners of Lake Amador, who I'm sure took some pressure as this thing started to take off, we started to go to work. And that's where we'll go from here. Is we've got the site. There's nothing there except oak trees and a nice place to have a show. And I'll be back. Lake Amador was really the perfect site for our concert. The area was privately owned, so we weren't dealing with a public entity, and that really, really helped us, I think, in the long run to get this thing through. The area itself is just gorgeous, with this beautiful lake, rolling foothills heading towards the high Sierras, beautiful oak trees, rolling hills, shade, swimming. They had their own food facilities up there along with our own, and you could just kick back and relax. These pictures were taken from some archives that I found that gives you just a hint of what the area looked like. When we did the show back in, it was the fall of the year, the pictures that I show you here of the deer really shows you kind of what it really looked like. It was kind of in fall, kind of burned out a little bit, but it was a perfect venue. It was secluded. There was wonderful parking down below the reservoir, and you couldn't have asked for a better location for the Amador Rock Festival. Typical of the way I always worked in rock and roll. I don't have any cue cards right now. I'm sitting in my office in Eagle, Idaho, in the middle of winter, and honestly, I'm just jamming along here with some basic ideas of what I think would be interesting to people. First thing that I think that needs to be spelled out to everyone is some of the really important people that are involved in this. Obviously, my wife, family at the time, just putting up every dime and nickel we had, totally. I mean, it was just unbelievable to think that we could pull this thing off. And basically, had no money, had some, but I mean, it was just one of those acts of love that you just somehow make it happen. Nothing is impossible. As far as main characters in this story, my first main character is my partner Gene Lane, who was a well-established disc jockey in Sacramento at K-Joy, and was just a super character. And I would have to say, of all the people that I've known in the business, Gene Lane was one of the very few that ever really taught me anything. He was crazy. He was an extroverted maniac. He was funny. He had an incredible imagination, and he was an integral part of keeping the energy going as we went through this thing. So I want to salute Gene right now and just say I don't think it could happen without him. It probably could, but I don't think so. So you had Doc Davis, kind of the legal front to get it started, and then you had Gene and me doing our magic to put together the show. As far as booking the show is concerned, which is kind of the next step, we have the site. We pretty much know where we can park everybody, what we're going to do. Obviously, I haven't gotten into any discussion about media yet, which is another big area that I'm very anxious to talk to you about, because I think we did a phenomenal job on media promotion. But the first thing you got to do is, you got to set the table with a show, and you got to go to work, and you've got to put together in your heart what you believe is the right show. And I had worked with Hollywood agents, Los Angeles agents for years, and they'd always trying to sell me all this junk. And I always just had certain people that I really believed in as artists, and those are the people that you wanted. Gene came to me initially when we were first putting this thing together, and through his radio contacts, he had an in for getting or contacting Ike and Tina Turner in Los Angeles through his radio people. And Gene came to me with that, and at the same time, I knew that there was one band that absolutely would pull this show off, and that was Santana. I had done a couple of shows with Santana at that point. Their album had not come out yet. They were the hottest thing in the Valley. They had just played Woodstock, but they were, at that moment in the fall of '69, they were the hottest thing going, without any question. And I think the first story I want to tell you about booking is that I had known Bill Graham for several years. I had booked the band I managed, Country Weather, there at the Fillmore numerous times. I'd had many conversations with Bill, sat in his office and heard some amazing stories, and I'm very proud to say that I knew the man. I knew the good Bill, I knew the bad Bill, and the bad Bill was a bad pill, and the good Bill was a wonderful Bill. And sometimes you were on the wrong side, sometimes you were on the right side. I think Bill meant well. It's such a tough business, and that San Francisco scene needed Bill Graham. People reminisce of Bad Bill, and he was the villain of the scene, and Chet Helms of the Avalon, he was the hippie guy, and he was cool. I'll tell you, Bill was the father of that scene. Bill was the dad of all of us back then. He was the guy that was 15, 16 years older. He's the guy that came from the East Coast. He's the guy who wanted to be an actor. He was an artist himself. But if anybody thinks the San Francisco scene could have made it anywhere near where it did without Bill Graham, they're crazy. If you were on the wrong side of Bill, you probably could hate him. If you were on the right side, life couldn't be any better. I was on both sides at times with Bill. I had some amazing encounters, and maybe I'll go into that sometime. But I knew right then and there for Amador that if I could land Santana, and if Gene could get Ike and Tina Turner, we were a long ways down the road to putting something really special together. And I went to Bill, and you got to remember, Bill's a promoter, Bill's a producer. And here's this young kid, I'm 23 years old, and I've been doing shows. He's aware of that. Bill considered everybody competition to some extent, probably. I don't think he considered me competition, but he wasn't going to make things easy for me. I came to him and said, "Hey, Bill, I want to book Santana for October 4th at this place called Lake Amador." And at the time, seriously, locally in Central California, Santana was probably making about $2,000 a night. And Bill leans back on his desk, and I can't do a good Bill imitation anymore. I used to do great Bill imitations. He said, $5,000. And the price he gave me, he in his head thought there's no way that I would accept that. And he said, $5,000. And I said, you got it. And it took him about 1 second to say, all in advance. Okay, no problem. Tomorrow. Okay, no problem. I want a contract today, Bill. And so I'm sure he's going, God damn it. This kid, he's bugging on me, man. Anyway, I got Santana for $5,000. Now you have to remember that the venue was large, and we certainly could have 25,000 people there at $350 a head. But anyway, I got Santana from Bill for $5,000, and Gene got Ike and Tina Turner for $2,500. Okay, and that was really the beginning. Once you had that, once you had the guts, the real guts, and just think of that combination, Carlos and Santana, and then Ike and Tina Turner. I mean, it just, it was like wow. And then we chased it with so many other great bands. And I think these photos of Bill really indicate or show the good Bill and kind of what I'd call the bad Bill. But nothing was below him. He would haul the garbage. He would do whatever it took to make a show work. And I had the utmost respect for him. And he was definitely a unique character and man, and we were really fortunate to have him in the San Francisco scene. As for the show itself, after getting Santana and getting Ike and Tina Turner, then it was just a matter of like piecing different bands together. I happened to know Fred Roth, who was the manager of the Sons of Champlin, and I went to Fred and I said, hey, I'm doing this thing at Lake Amador. I've got Santana, Ike and Tina Turner. Well, one thing leads to another. These people hear that and it's like, whoa, you know, that sounds like a can't miss thing. So we booked the Sons of Champlin. We booked Taj Mahal, and that's a story in itself that I'll talk about later. We booked Bo Diddley, and just think about this, you know, Santana, Ike and Tina, the Sons, Taj Mahal, Bo Diddley, Albert Collins, Kaleidoscope out of LA. I wasn't too familiar with them, but they kind of came along in the package with Ike and Tina. We kind of took them, and that's no offense to them at all. They were a good band. Al Wilson, I don't know if you remember Al Wilson. We also took another band out of LA from the Ike and Tina Turner people named Southwind. I have no real comment about them. They were there. They played fine. My band Country Weather, who was very big in the Valley and had such a great feel for rock and roll, they were a perfect fit. We took Cold Blood with Lydia Pence, which was just another a great blues horn band with Lydia singing out front. We booked folk singer John Fahey. He never showed up. I don't know whatever happened to him. We booked a band called Lynn County. Don't remember too much about why that was. And then a band called Daybreak, who was handled by a partner of mine for many, many years, Jeff Nerney, and that was just the magic of it was in place. It was a perfect setup. I'm not sure how many bands were. I'm actually looking down at the poster. I've got it sitting down below the camera here. 10 bands, 12 bands, whatever it was. And at that point, you've met your first major goal, and that's booking your show. You got to have that. I mean, you got to have something to sell. Well, we had something major to sell. So from that point, we go on to media and how we're going to get it out there. And I'll be back about that. That concludes part one of our 3-part documentary on Amador. If you have some comments, please go to our Facebook page titled Lake Amador Music Festival. We would love to hear from you. Now on to part 2.